Welcome back to Open Window Politics. Today we're going to be doing a prediction between the current governor of Kentucky on the Democratic side, that being Governor Andy Beshear, like I mentioned, on the Democratic side, versus the Republican, at the moment, frontrunner for the 2028 Republican primary, that being the current Vice President, J.D. Vance. So Vance rose to fame as an author the majority of the time and then later entered politics. He was a senator from Ohio before he was picked as Trump's running mate. And then ultimately, of course, Trump won in 2024, and he became vice president. And he, at the moment, is regarded as the most likely individual to end up being the 2028 presidential Republican nominee. And Andy Beshear is, like I mentioned, Democratic governor from Kentucky, which, as you can see here by the safe red characterization of the state, is a very impressive feat for a Democrat to do in the state of Kentucky. And I think Andy Beshear would be one of the better candidates Democrats could put forward. I think J.D. Vance would be pretty good for the Republicans, probably not the best they could do. But I think these would both be good candidates for their respective parties to put forward. This isn't necessarily a prediction either of them will win their party's primaries, but just fun to do a general election prediction. So I'll be going through each of the core 7 swing states as well as the swing district there in Nebraska. So we'll start with the first swing state in Nevada. So I'm going to have I'm going to go with lean blue for the state of Nevada. Andy Beshear definitely has had to portray himself as definitely more of a moderate, and I would argue, he's had to do so to win, like I mentioned, as a Democrat in a deep red state like Kentucky. And I think that if he can appeal to voters in a state like Kentucky, he can appeal to comparatively easier states for Democrats to win, such as these core 7 swing states. I could even see a realistic possibility where the 4 the 4 likely Republican states, that being Iowa, Ohio, Florida, and Texas, I could see maybe all but Texas narrowing up into the lean column. For now, we'll keep them at likely, but definitely a possibility. And then we get to Arizona. Now, Biden was able to win Arizona. I think it would be reasonable that with the current environment definitely favoring Democrats. We've seen that pretty consistently in the off-year elections, and it'll be interesting what the American public will see during the 2026 midterms coming up in November. That can give us a better idea of which way the country is leaning at a much larger scale than these individual off-year elections really can give us. So the midterms will be a good indicator. And I think if the election were to be held today and Andy Beshear was the Democratic nominee facing off against J.D. Vance, the Republican, that it would result in a Democratic victory in the state of Arizona. So that's going to be 11 electoral college votes for Governor Andy Beshear. And then I will go to the other half of the Sun Belt. I feel more confident putting Georgia into Andy Beshear's column than North Carolina. We'll get to North Carolina next. Georgia has seen some great election results for Democrats after 2024, and even in 2024, it did not go super far to the right. It was still in the tilt red column in 2024. The only swing state that went into the lean red column in 2024 for Trump was the state of Arizona, but Georgia has been showing positive signs for Democrats, and I think with the momentum certainly favoring Democrats at the moment, that it would result in a Democratic victory in Georgia. North Carolina, I feel less confident in predicting that for Beshear. I think he would do quite well, and I think he would narrow it up, but I just don't. Right now, the environment is good for Democrats, but I wouldn't argue it's 2008 level good for Democrats, and that was the last time the state went blue on the presidential level. I do think if for the Sun Belt in general, that being the states of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, that they will become more and more Democratic friendly as the years go on. But I think if the election were to be held today between these two candidates, like I mentioned before, that it would just be a Republican victory in North Carolina. And then that leaves us with these 3 Rust Belt states, so they are going to be crucial for the Vance campaign for sure. For Vance to win, he would need to win all 3. But I forgot the district here in In Nebraska, this district I'm going to put into the lean blue. This district even went to Harris in 2024, and that was definitely a bad election year for Democrats. So it isn't too out of the possibility that it would remain in the Democratic Party's column in 2028. And I probably see the state of Wisconsin as being the most likely to end up in the Democratic Party's column of the three Rust Belt states. So that brings Beshear to 269. And then if Vance were to win the remaining swing states, it would go to the House. Complicated process, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. We're going to go to Michigan, and ultimately, I think both candidates have some real Rust Belt appeal. Vance, of course, is former senator from Ohio, and then Andy Beshear is, of course, governor from the state just south of it in Kentucky, and they are both from the same region and would both stand a good shot at winning the Rust Belt. Ultimately, I think just with the environment certainly favoring Democrats at the moment that we've seen, that it would result in a Democratic victory in the Rust Belt as well as the nation at large. Generally, the Rust Belt votes together. In 2016, all three went to Trump. 2020, all went to Biden. 2024, all went to Trump. So it's had a pretty consistent history of the three Rust Belt states, that being Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, voting together. And I don't think this election would be an exception to that. So that is going to be 303 for Governor Andy Beshear on the Democratic side to 235 for the Republican J.D. Vance. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.